Thanks for joining us today. And we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association's Town Hall Series, Tourism Marketing Initiatives for 2022 and Beyond. Goati kaita wahaupa, tu shinome kututuitsa, este kohaya hanu rashkamashti shtaza. My name is Bianca Mitchell. I am from the Pueblo of Acoma, and I am AIANTA's Education Manager. For those of you who are not familiar with AIANTA, for nearly 2 decades, AIANTA has served as the national voice for American Indian nations engaged in cultural tourism. In addition to serving as the voice for Indian country tourism, AIANTA provides technical assistance and training to tribal nations and Native-owned enterprises engaged in tourism, hospitality, and recreation. AIANTA's mission is to define, introduce, grow, sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values. AIANTA's educational offerings include this year's American Indian Tourism Conference, which will take place at the Wekopa Casino Resort on the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation in Scottsdale, Arizona, from October 25th through the 28th. And registration is still underway. You can go onto our website at aianta.org/AITC. This year's theme is Reimagine, Reemerge, Reunite, Stronger Together in Indian Country. And we are celebrating our 23rd anniversary. Visit our website at aiantaagain.org to learn more about our educational program offerings, and at aianta.org/AITC for additional information on registration for the AITC. At this time, I am pleased to announce our AIANTA CEO, Sherry L. Rupert, who is Paiute and Washoe. She has nearly 2 decades of executive level experience managing and promoting Native American tourism. Since joining AIANTA as CEO in 2019, she has spearheaded several initiatives, including the organization's groundbreaking new tribal agritourism program and overseeing AIANTA's first ever virtual American Indian Tourism Conference, which drew a record number of registrants in 2020. As CEO of the only national association dedicated to Indigenous tourism, she is the leading voice when it comes to advocating for travel and tourism as a significant economic driver in tribal nations. Among her responsibilities, she curates a robust educational program for tribes and Indigenous-owned hospitality enterprises around the country. Prior to assuming the role of CEO, she was president of AIANTA's board of directors since 2010. During that time, she was instrumental in working with Congress to pass the Native American Tourism and Improving Visitor Experience Act, also known as the NATIVE Act. Sherry was formerly the executive director of the State of Nevada Indian Commission, where she reported directly to the governor of Nevada to serve as a liaison to the state's 27 tribes, bands, and colonies. During her tenure, she developed the Nevada Indian Territory Initiative and won awards and accolades for her work in preserving the site of the Stewart Indian School as a museum and cultural center. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sherry Rupert, our AIANTA CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca, and welcome everybody. If you are not speaking, if you could put yourself on mute, we would appreciate that. That'll help our speakers to be able to provide a great presentation to you today and for a great discussion later on. As AIANTA enters its new fiscal year, the association is rolling out an exciting series of new partner opportunities. Joining AIANTA's already established partnerships with the Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail, the Lewis and Clark National Historic Trail, and the Native American Agriculture Fund. We will also be celebrating Native American history in conjunction with America 250. Additionally, we're rolling out a new collaboration with Leave No Trace, an organization that strives to minimize travelers' impact on the destinations they visit. We are looking forward to the discussion today and to learn more from our guests, Jamie Lee Marks, Director of Tribal and National Partnerships, and Dr. Megan Springate, Director of Engagement from the America 250 Foundation, and Ben Lahan, Senior Director of Research and Consulting from the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. We're also very excited to hear from you, our participants in today's town hall discussion. So we have a poll question for everybody. This is our first one for today. So as you can see on your screen, we're asking, have you heard of or know anything about America 250? And that's a yes, no, maybe. And we'll give it a few seconds here. Okay, a few more. And then we'll share the results. I'm going to end this poll. And you can see the results here. Oh, wait, maybe you can. We have 6 said that yes, they know something about America 250. And 13 of you all said no. And 2 said maybe. Thank you for sharing that. So that'll help out Jamie, Lee, and Megan as we move forward through the discussion today. America 250 is a multi-year effort to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the United States. This effort is supported by the America 250 Foundation. America 250 represents a coalition of public and private partners that are creating initiatives and programs to commemorate the anniversary and to inspire Americans to imagine the next 250 years. The commemoration period began in July of 2020 and culminates on July 4th of 2026.
Standing for the cause of liberty is as old as our country itself.
It is the American story, a story of fallible people, united across the generations by grand and enduring ideals.
The time has come to reaffirm our enduring spirit, to carry forward that promise that all are equal and all deserve a chance to pursue their full measure of happiness.
AIANTA sees our partnership with America 250 as an important opportunity. Our stories, our history have not been fully told and shared. It's time for that to change. And AIANTA sees cultural tourism as a tool for cultural perpetuation. And by being part of the America 250 commemoration, we intend to elevate Native voices through tourism planning and initiatives designed to inform and engage domestic and international visitors. The picture on this slide is one of my favorite pictures. It is with great pride that I share this with you today. It's a picture of my son, John, at the Stewart Father's Day powwow in Carson City, celebrating and perpetuating our culture through dance. John was named a cultural guardian and a Native Youth Ambassador by the state of Nevada when he was just 10 years old. So I think that speaks to what we can accomplish and through this America 250 initiative. So I'm pleased to welcome our guests from the America 250 Foundation. First, I would like to introduce Jamie Lee Marks. She is the Director of Tribal and National Partnerships with the America 250 Foundation. Jamie leads the division that promotes building and maintaining America 250's relationships and develops partnership agreements with tribal partners and national commercial and non-commercial organizations. She works in collaboration with directors and staff across the planning and programming team to ensure that Indigenous histories, perspectives, and tribal engagement are reflected across America 250's commemorative efforts. Prior to America 250, she managed the National Tribal Historic Preservation Program, housed at the National Park Service, and served as the External Affairs Officer for FEMA's Office of National Capital Region Coordination. where she provided external affairs support for the 2021 inauguration National Special Security Event and FEMA's vaccination mission in the National Capital Region. We also have with us today Dr. Megan Springate. Megan is the Director of Engagement at the America 250 Foundation. Megan drives the foundation's efforts to make America's complex, expansive histories from local to national, accessible and meaningful to all. To do this, Megan and her team work collaboratively across America 250, external communities and partners to foster communication, teaching, learning, and engagement with America's past and its future. Megan comes to America 250 from the National Park Service, where she served as National Coordinator for the successful National Park Service 19th Amendment Centennial Commemoration. She has received several awards for her work, including the 2021 John Cotter Award from the Society for Historical Archaeology. Ladies, thank you for joining us today and sharing more about the work and vision of America 250.
Hi all. I just wanted to give a quick thank you before handing it off to my wonderful colleague Megan. Just thank you so much to AIANTA for the opportunity to be here with all of you and learn from you. I hope it is the beginning of one of many conversations with folks here. And I just want to acknowledge everyone here and everything that you bring to the space today. Thank you, Sherry, Bianca, Hannah, Sherry, again, Monica, and just everyone that's been involved in making this partnership a reality. We're just so excited about it. And with that, I'll hand it over to Megan.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie Lee. Thanks, Sherry, and everyone at AIANTA, and everyone who's here, right? I am very excited to share this vision with you and hope that you come along for the ride and join us in making sure that, right, that we're doing it right and that we are sharing all of American history pre-1776 through till today. It's all important. It's all how we got where we are now. And I look forward to working with you. So America 250 is the multi-year commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the 1776 signing of the Declaration of Independence. And as Sherry mentioned, the commemoration will peak on July 4, 2026. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to deepen our nation's understanding of our complicated past and ignite shared optimism for the future. And I will say that using the word commemoration is 100% intentional, right? That we understand that it is not just a celebration. There is celebration in there, but there is also commemoration, and there's also a lot that isn't celebratory. As part of this larger discussion, and we acknowledge that and honor that and intend to work within that framework all the way through. America 250 programs, partnerships, and initiatives hope to demonstrate the breadth and depth of the American spirit and activate future generations of change makers to work towards a more perfect union. Informed by the successes and shortcomings of past historical commemorations, the blueprint of the largest and most inclusive commemoration in our nation's history will include America 250-led programs and those fostered through agreements with federal, tribal, state, U.S. jurisdictional, international, national, corporate, and community partners. It's an all-in situation. We want everybody to walk this walk with us. The organization is at its earliest stages of strategic planning at this time. We just recently hired up just this year, so we've only really just begun. So I'm excited to talk to AIANTA and folks here to get in while we're just getting off the ground. We honor the unique government-to-government relationship between tribal nations and the United States. And as America 250 launches commemorative efforts, we commit to partnering with tribal nations, organizations, and communities to plan a commemoration that engages with our complicated past and our present and allows us to envision a future together. In 2021, America 250 Foundation brought on new leadership and staff, and we are engaged again in strategic planning that are going to shape the next 5 years. And we want to hear from you, and we are here to listen and carry those messages both forward in time as we move forward, but also up the chain to make sure that our leadership is aware of what communities want and need and how they want to engage with us. Sherry, could I have the next slide? Thank you. So here's just a quick overview of our mission, vision, values, right? All of the things that foundations put together. I really want to, y'all of course can read these, but I want to draw your attention to our purpose, which is to help catalyze a more perfect union. And also the values and themes in particular. So our values as an organization: service, diversity, collaboration, respect, integrity, optimism, and imagination, which is a huge bill to fill, but we are absolutely up for it. And our themes are to invite, involve, imagine, and inspire. And you can see, right, this is not just flag waving. We wouldn't need 5 years of planning if it was just going to be flag waving. We do really are here for the mission to tell the whole story and move this all forward. Next slide, please. Jamie Lee, hand it off to you.
Sure. So thank you so much. I feel like you did such a great job talking about the opportunity ahead of us that sadly I get just to skip right to the challenges, right? So I don't think I need to tell anyone here that every event in ACRE related to U.S. history is of crucial importance to Indigenous nations and communities, right? Not everyone knows that, or else, we wouldn't, it wouldn't be so hard to figure out how to go about planning this. But achieving our vision, and it is a true vision at this point, for the largest and most inclusive commemoration of 1776, and really for us, much more broader interest than that, right? Will no doubt bring many challenges. Okay, time for the slide change. Thank you. So many of us have heard the wisdom and shared the wisdom, nothing about us without us, right? But oftentimes that's not what we see happening. That really presents a unique challenge for the scope of the commemoration that Congress has charged the commission and now us, the foundation, with helping out with. Real commemorative work means acknowledging difficult histories. It means understanding our presents, envisioning our futures together, and really working with communities as partners to shape what that's going to look like. This idea that nothing was discovered and that Indigenous nations are central to every moment in the history of this continent and much later the United States can be a new idea for some. For others, it is well known, but there might be a little interest in being a part of a 250th commemoration of 1776 for so many valid reasons. I think, the reason that we're here and have chosen to be here in this presentation together is I think we share a vision with AIANTA that there may be space to leverage this commemoration to create real opportunities to help share real histories and I really love that part of our mission that is about imagine and inspire. I don't know about all of you, but after the past few years, I really need that space to think about how can we, engage in truth, reconciliation, moving forward, imagining, building, right? All of those things together at once. The good news is we don't have to go alone here. We have learnings that we've have from past commemorations. So many people here have been involved in and are very aware of the successes, the challenges, and then the successes of the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial event in engaging and creating 4 collaborative PSAs running on national television stations, 15 national signature events, some hosted by tribal nations, a robust circle of tribal advisors, and so on, right? Like that's our inspiration here, is how can we go bigger? How can we invite more in? And what can we do to partner with AIANTA to help think about how to do that in the best way we can? I think next slide. So, okay, I've been here since June, so I'm pretty green to the organization. And since I've gotten here, I've really put an emphasis on taking stock of what's going on, right? Because, for me, engaging with Native organizations and nations is not just one part of our organization. It needs to touch everything that we're doing, so that when we're building our plans that we go back to later, there's something in each of the part of our plan that will motivate us to really engage, even if folks aren't on our team. One of the things that I'm really excited to share with you, and hopefully, Andrew, you don't mind me putting you on the spot in a minute, is I was able to advocate for and hire an amazing senior manager of tribal partnerships, Andre Jacobs, and I'll give him a moment to say hello if he's up for it.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, as Jamie was just mentioning, my name is Andre Jacobs. I'm from a town called Mumtaritlaremu, or Bethel, Alaska. I was born in Anchorage, raised in Bethel, and I'm coming to the organization from working in homelessness in the Pacific Northwest, in Tacoma, Washington, and Seattle, Washington, working in Native American homeless specifically as a part of a development team to develop permanent housing in the Pacific Northwest. But before that, I come from experience working on building clinics in rural villages in remote Southwest Alaska, the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. It's a pivot for me to this role here, and I'm excited to be a part of something so historic and at such a large scale to improve the lives of our Native communities and Native organizations. So I'm excited to join you and thank you for being a part of this, AIANTA, and I'm just excited to be a part of this for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, however long it takes. So thank you, Jamie Lee.
Thanks for letting me put you on the spot there. Another exciting thing we were able to achieve is a connection with the Department of the Interior's leadership, Secretary Holland's team, to talk about first steps in interagency federal consultation, and that conversation is ongoing. Great, I think the next slide. I love how I'm trying to remember my own slides. Isn't that great? Awesome. So I wanted to give everyone kind of a snapshot of just since June, what we've been able to accomplish with the amazing colleagues that I have, like Megan and others across the team. We've updated our national signature program planning to reflect plans for collaborative planning, advisory councils. I mean, thank you so much, Sherry, for being a co-chair of one of our advisory councils. That's going to be very important in making sure that recommendations go all the way to our leadership immediately to try to make sure what we're doing I don't know, is effective and exciting. I will, at this point, hand it over to Megan to kind of, I'm about to talk about her stuff. So there you go.
Thanks, Jamie Lee. And Andrea, I'm very glad to have you on the team as well. You've been here a hot minute and you've already been speaking into what we do over here in engagement in ways that are excellent and useful. And that's good. So yes, we have advisory councils, which are made up of folks from across the country in leadership positions and community members to help advise what we're doing. And as we said, to bring that message into the organization and up the chain. In engagement, we've got book clubs, article series, podcasts are coming, art competition, community conversations. All of these are ways to invite people in all of these different ways to engage with American history, engage with the history of this place where we live, and perhaps invite them into histories that they didn't know that they cared about, that are new to them and interesting in a way that is exciting to them, right? It's not all about, you know, we're going to cover all the history. 1776 is the pivot. We're doing the full history all the way around in different ways. So some of them is like the sort of academic road. You know, the subject matter expert who has, you know, deep understanding of the subject matter, sort of giving that story. Others are going to be more storytelling. The book club is memoir and historically based fiction. It's a different way in, it's a different conversation about history. We do have Man Killer, A Chief and Her People is going to be the second book in our book club. We've got some articles pending on Native American and Indigenous stories. So trying to bring all of these stories together in different ways that all invite folks in to be curious about our history and about each other. We have state and jurisdictional partnerships. Again, mentioned we're working with all 50 states and 6 US jurisdictions and territories to help capacity build and provide the opportunities for states to engage in meaningful ways, not dictating what that looks like, but providing the support that we can from this central sort of national place to support what's happening. And then national partnerships, Jamie Lee and I work together closely in the national partnerships space to work with partners and bring them on. Jamie Lee, did you want to speak national partnerships in the tribal space?
Sure. I'll just mention for a second, just as a heads up, that you know, while we do have plans and are hoping to see increased funding as we hire development staff to support direct partnerships with tribal nations, we have a very limited suite right now of national partnerships we're still working on. When you don't have any money to offer people, it's a little bit harder, right, to forge partnerships. But we were, you know, very lucky to be able to enter into a partnership with AIANTA to support some really cool work together that I'm sure you'll hear more about at a later time. And then I will also flag that we've been able to support a Young People's Continental Congress with Carpenter's Hall, and they've expressed explicit interest to me in terms of wanting to engage tribal youth to apply. I will bring youth from all over the country, to, I believe, 2 students or 1 student and 1 teacher from each state and US jurisdiction. I don't like that word, but you know, like DC, et cetera, to Philadelphia for a civic dialogue. So we're really hoping to work with some awesome people and organizations. Of course, like we're looking for funding to make sure that that opportunity is free for folks that are selected.
All right. It's time for poll question number 2. Let's see. Okay. The second poll question is, can you think of ways to partner with America 250 to market tourism opportunities of interest to your community? It's a yes or no question. We'll give it a few seconds for people to respond. Few more. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. So 82% say they can think of a way to partner with America 250. And maybe the other 18%, we can give them some ideas. Okay.
Great. So just sort of looking ahead, I'm thrilled to see that folks who are attending can, right, just like that on the spot, think of ways to collaborate and work together to amplify, right? Like we want to help amplify what y'all are doing. And so I love that the collaborative ideas are already there. Please contact us. The sort of general contact us with ideas, etc. is engage@america250.org. We will be sharing our personal email addresses with you as well, and you're of course welcome to contact us that way. Upcoming events currently running right now is November Salute. We are taking submissions from the public to share a family member or friend who has served or currently serves in the military, the reserves. We will then be using those images to create a larger mosaic and installing that in a physical location, which we are just finalizing now. It's going to be pretty exciting, and it will also be available digitally online. You can find that link at america250.org. A national art competition is forthcoming. Among the judges are Judy Tolling McCarthy, if anybody is aware of her and her work. She's an Apache elder, an artist, and she's one of our judges. That will be announced shortly and also currently running. Jamie Lee, do you want to take this one? I know this one is close to you.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So America 250 Awards is a collaboration with the NFL to recognize 9/11 heroes, first responders, and community heroes. Yeah, Megan, absolutely right. I'm very passionate about this. I feel like, you know, Indigenous people serve at such a high rate in our military and certainly are helping fight our biggest fires, and just it goes so under recognized. So I'm really trying to get the word out and get some amazing people and community heroes, right? That could be anything from teacher to, you know, folks that have the food pantry in their house that anyone can come get something from at any time. Like I've met someone who actually turned their living room into a what's the word? Gosh, like a cyber cafe for all of the kids in their neighborhood to go use after. Those are the types of folks that we're really wanting to hear about. It's an on-field during a Thanksgiving, I believe, the Bears-Lions game award. So a good opportunity maybe for someone who likes football to have some fun, but more importantly for folks to really just appreciate some amazing people. So if y'all could help spread the word, that would be really appreciated.
All right. We're already at poll question number 3. Let's pull this up here. Dang, I'm an expert at this now. Are you interested in learning more about America 250? It's a yes or no, maybe question. Give it a few seconds. Getting some quick responses on this one. Just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end this poll and share the results. So 83% are saying yes, ladies. 17% are on the fence, maybe.
And don't worry, it's not a one-time offer. You know, if a maybe becomes a yes or no becomes a yes, we will be here. We want to talk.
Absolutely. So what are some of the key moments in your community's history that are important to ensure that are part of our commemorative planning? We don't know what we don't know, but we're here to learn. And so please do share. I see some questions coming in the chat. Sherry, do we want to do some questions and answers now, or do we want to save it till the end?
We can discuss now if you'd like.
Great. So while folks are thinking about questions, Sherry, maybe if you could move it to the next slide just with our contact info while we take some Q&A. Rachel Roy, could you email us at engage@america250.org with your request? That would be amazing. Let's see, how would you partner? Oh, that was Bianca asked the question. Rebecca asks, has the foundation reached out to existing tribal organizations working in this area like Illuminative comes to mind?
Yeah, so I can field that a little bit. Yes, so we've had some previous staff and we're still I say we, I love how, you know, it's really a we now. I've got this awesome team, but I, Jamie Lee, have been trying to piece together a picture of what previous communications have gone up. And I definitely don't think they've been enough, right? Or robust enough. I have wanted to reach out to Illuminative and a host of other people. I mean, frankly, just including USET, right? But I've been really trying to wait to see what do we have to offer? What is our strategic plan going to look like? Will it really include the type of engagement that I'm hearing it will? And so far looking good. So definitely ready to move forward with some conversations and would love any support making those connections. And I know, I mean, Andrea, you've been here for like 3 days and you're all over it. So I absolutely assume that would definitely be part of the plan.
So Rachel Roy from Sitka says that she'd like to host America 250 during one of their upcoming Chamber of Commerce speaker series. So that's that's a great opportunity. And I think Jamie Lee, you asked for her to get a hold of you.
Yes, and Rachel, I absolutely took down your email, and I think, yeah, our team would be just so delighted to connect in any way that we can.
And she also mentions that the Alaska Day, Reclamation Day, purchase of Alaska from Russia in 1867 in Sitka should be included. Thank you for naming this America 250 and not the semi-quincentennial.
Well, some people still call it the semi-quincentennial, but I'm telling you, if you hear that, you can just call it when I learned you could say semi-quin, I was like, I'm in. I can do that. That's easy. I got it. So absolutely.
Yep. And just a note from my side of the house to Rachel. So one of the things that we're working on, again, is those article series, which is sort of the history of, inviting folks in to learn these histories that they may not know, or parts of the histories that they think they know, but they don't know. And that is exactly the kind of topic that we would love to host an article in our article series. That's going to be launching October 15th. Keep it in mind. Anybody here wants to share those stories, please feel free to pitch them to me. And I 100% understand if you want to wait and see what that article series looks like once it starts rolling out of the gate. We're aiming for October 15th. So yeah, keep an eye on us and let us know how we're doing.
One of the areas where I've done some work in is the Indian boarding schools across the nation, specifically the Stewart Indian School in Carson City, Nevada, establishing that as a cultural center and welcome center to be able to tell the story of the Indian schools. And I think that story really is an unknown story to most Americans. And I think that's definitely a story that needs to be shared.
Yeah. I think people, again, I think this is one of those stories they think they know, but they don't know. And they don't know how recently those schools were in operation. So that's 100% in my stories to share.
Right. So Rebecca Narragon has her hand raised. Rebecca, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and do that and ask your question.
Hi, thank you, Sherry and everyone. Megan, when you were mentioning the article series and hoping to start it here in October, is that going to be leading up to, in the next 4 to 5 years, to the Synquin? Because what's coming to mind is the organization I represent, we have some previous articles, some previous stories that we might be able to dust those off, update them, and so hopefully get them in sort of in the queue for sharing as soon as possible.
I love that. What organization are you with, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm with United South and Eastern Tribes. USET is what we refer to it as, and I represent 33 tribal nations spanning from the northeastern woodlands down to the Everglades across the Gulf of Mexico. And what's really exciting about this opportunity, and we're talking about the stories that people don't know, the trust and treaty obligations of the tribal nations on the East Coast predate the founding of the United States and are actually with the Crown in England and with the Spanish government. So I think that's something that that's not really shared about too often.
Yeah, please do get in touch with myself and Jamie Lee and I, and we will figure out what that looks like. And I really appreciate your offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm looking for more raised hands. Let's see. And if you have questions, you can also put them down in the chat oh, Lisa Montgomery looks like she has her hand raised. Lisa, you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm from Penobscot Nation up in Maine, and I'm so glad that Rebecca mentioned those details. When you had asked about events or stories that we could tell, Penobscot Nation has fought in every single war that the United States has had, all the way, down to the Civil War. We have records, historical records that that show that. So I think that would be a really good thing to highlight. And I'm also a veteran as well.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, again, please get in touch, send me an email, mspringgate@america250.org or Jamie Lee at jmarks, and I would love to be able to share those stories. I think it's important that people know. And also, I invite you to peruse November Salute over at america250.org as well.
Yeah, and Lisa, thank you so much for your service and for chiming in, for sure.
Okay, we have just a few more minutes for a few more questions. Are there any questions out there? Looking for raised hands. Okay. Jamie Lee, Megan, Andre, did you have any other comments that you'd like to make?
I'll just chime in to say our hearts are genuinely in this, and thanks for your patience with us as we start to reach out to people more and more. We hope that as we continue to grow as an organization, we can bring in some more development funds and really support some of the amazing ideas that you're going to have. So just thanks for being here with us.
Agreed. Thanks for listening and engaging, and I hope that we want to do it right. Jamie Lee's right. Our hearts are 100% in this, and we want to do it right. And yeah, we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. I think this is a good start to bringing awareness to the commemoration. That was, one of a year ago when we participated in the first of listening sessions for the hospitality and tourism sector. That was one of the things mentioned was, Indian country doesn't know anything about America 250. And that if it's truly going to be a commemoration that includes everybody, then we need to work really hard to ensure not just participation, but awareness of America 250 and what that means for this country. So thank you for joining us today, and we appreciate all of your information. We are going to be posting this PowerPoint for viewing, and as you can see, your information is in here, and we'd be happy to pass that along to anybody as well moving forward. So thank you so much, and thank you, Andre, for joining as well, and welcome to America 250. All right. Okay. We're going to move on to our next partner. The global adventure travel market is projected to see a 10.7% compound annual growth by 2030. That means the market is expected to more than triple in 10 years. AIANTA has seen evidence of this growth and interest, especially during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Many tribes told us travelers were using outdoor lands as an alternative to crowded indoor experiences. This increase in recreational travel on tribal lands was what led AIANTA to form a partnership with the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. We will be building out our partnership in 2 phases, but I'll leave it to Leave No Trace to outline the specifics. And now I'd like to introduce Ben Lahan, Senior Director of Research and Consulting for the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, thanks, Sherry. Thank you all for being here. I would also like to thank AIANTA and all the staff for the opportunity to have a chance to chat today about how we can utilize Leave No Trace for protecting cultural resources through cultural tourism and so forth. And I'm just really happy to be here to chat with you all. I'd also like to mention that, Leave No Trace is an organization, and I'll give you a little background in a minute, but we acknowledge that the lands that almost everyone enjoys through outdoor recreational activities are the traditional and ancestral lands of Indigenous people and First Nations. And our intention is to honor that cultural history and those ways of stewarding a land that's been practiced from ancient times to today. And so we're really excited about the opportunity we have here to continue to overlay Leave No Trace beyond just federally owned public lands to all lands where people spend time in the outdoors. We feel like it's just as applicable whether you're in a city park or if you're on indigenous lands or you're in a national park. Leave No Trace is relevant for all of those locations. And for those of you who may not be as familiar with Leave No Trace, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been around for about 30 years. And our mission is simply to teach people how to enjoy the outdoors responsibly. It sounds simple, but it's very challenging. And one of the things that we know over the last 18 months is that COVID has certainly driven so many people to the outdoors, those who were already into the outdoors and a lot of new people who couldn't do other leisure activities and substituted the outdoors. And so lands all across the US have certainly felt the I'll say the impacts and the influx of people. And while it's been very challenging, I've been with Leave No Trace a long time, and I actually have looked at this whole situation as probably one of the greatest opportunities in my career to educate people about enjoying the outdoors responsibly. So yes, there have been some impacts and some issues. That said, we know that there's the opportunity to reach a lot of good people with good information about taking care of the places where they spend time outside. Next slide, please. If you look at visitation to a variety of public lands across the US, and these numbers are high, but we haven't really fully captured what all the visitation looked like in 2020 and 2021. But if you look at the agencies listed here, we're seeing visitation in the hundreds of millions of people every year across the US and across public lands. If you look at the far right column, which is a bit of an outlier here, that's America's state park system. There are over 8,000 state parks in the US, and they have over 800 million annual visits to those state park lands. And the interesting thing about Leave No Trace and visitation to lands in general is that we're always dealing with, in many cases, individual but cumulative impacts on the landscape. So it's not necessarily the one time that someone throws an apple core off the trail. It's when something like that happens over and over and over again is when we start to see an accumulation of impacts over time that can lead to serious, in some cases, serious ecological impacts to the landscape, but also more impacts to people's experience, to visitor experience. We can have a lot of social impacts, visitor conflict, and these sorts of things. And so one thing is clear, we're always making more people, we're not making more land, and we're sharing in many ways a finite resource. And so it's more and more important every year as visitation grows to all lands that we can promote a message of leaving these places as good or perhaps even better than you found them. So next slide, please. So Leave No Trace is based on 7 principles that have been in existence for many, many years. The interesting thing about these principles is they do evolve and adapt over time. These are science-based principles. The information that we provide through Leave No Trace is science-based. There's 2 primary scientific disciplines that we rely on to inform the 7 principles. One is a field of study known as recreation ecology, and that looks at recreation-related impacts, including tourism. It looks at how those impacts are caused. It looks at the implications to the landscape, to other people, but it also looks at the managerial implications of those impacts, and it provides solutions. And so our techniques and tactics for minimizing impacts are largely based in this recreation ecology science. The other piece of scientific inquiry that we're most I'd say interested in, certainly for the last 10 years, is a field of study known as human dimensions of natural resources. And that's really looking at people's relationship to the land and understanding their specific attitudes and their norms and their perceptions and their values. We also look at things like their behavioral intention. What are people intending to do when they spend time outdoors? And we look at, in some cases, their actual behavior through our research. And then what we're really trying to do is identify the leverage points for effectively influencing the decisions that people make when they spend time outside. We want people to do that in a responsible way. And Leave No Trace is a light-handed educational approach where we have no regulatory capacity. We are not rules or regulations. Leave No Trace is basically a framework for making good decisions about enjoying the outdoors responsibly. And so the more people that we can bring into this effort, the better off all of our shared lands will be. So the 7 principles you see here: plan ahead and prepare. Some of these are fairly intuitive, but that's really the idea of planning before you ever leave home, finding out where you want to go, what amenities might be there, and what are the experiences that could be there. What do you need to have to visit a place safely or respectfully? Travel and camp on durable surfaces. We're talking about just what's under your feet. Where are you walking, and where are you camping and hiking and so forth, or riding horses or mountain bikes, however you're spending time outside, and making sure you're doing these activities with the land in mind in terms of the impact you could either avoid or leave. We also have dispose of waste properly. This is human waste, this is trash, this is litter, this is wastewater we might create in a camping situation, for example. This is critically important. This can be one of the more significant impacts we can have on the land. And then we certainly have leave what you find. And this is really where I think we have the most robust information about cultural tourism in terms of providing an experience for people, but making sure they leave what they find there, that they're not either damaging or vandalizing or maybe inadvertently disturbing things that shouldn't be disturbed. I mentioned the cumulative but individual impacts. This is the one instance where when we have cultural resources, cultural, heritage, geologic, archaeological, anthropological resources, this is the one instance where one impact to this type of resource can be devastating. It can be a forever impact. And so the cumulative effect is really, it doesn't really come into play when we're talking about resources that once they're damaged or destroyed or impacted, they can be gone. And that's a really significant component of Leave No Trace, is helping people understand both the intrinsic value of these resources, the cultural value, the value of our society, and making sure that they do everything they can to take care of these things. We also have minimized campfire impacts. I would imagine most of you have heard of some of the large wildfires, certainly this year and last year here in the state of Colorado, where I live. We had the 2 largest wildfires in state history. Campfires can lead to these sorts of things. So making sure that people understand how to have a responsible fire is important. Respecting wildlife, it's another key issue in terms of we recreate in the wildlife's homes often, and making sure that we're doing that in a way that doesn't unnecessarily impact various species. And the last one is being considerate of other people that are out recreating, because again, we're all trying to enjoy a finite space. And so thinking about how we can all essentially really grab the idea that the outdoors are better when we're all together. When we can all spend time outside, be respectful of one another and how people choose to spend time outside, it leads to a more inclusive outdoor experience. And that's really something that we're very much interested in and have been, but certainly moving forward into the future, we want to see those types of opportunities. So if you could go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
Okay, Ben, here's your poll if you want to go through this.
Sure. So one of the things that I should have mentioned on the last slide, let me just say this real quick before we jump into the poll, and that is that much of the impact that we see from recreation, from tourism, is not malicious intent. Generally speaking, what we see are people who are just uninformed. They're uninformed or they're underinformed. They sometimes are careless, and sometimes they are unskilled. And so again, we don't see a lot of impact that's just purely malicious intent. Most of it is just ignorance. And so that's a great opportunity for us to educate people. So that said, how are tribes or businesses currently sharing guidelines on how to enjoy local outdoor areas? How are you getting the information out there because we're looking for opportunities where we can message to people. You know, anytime we know where people are seeking out information, that's a great opportunity for us to provide tailored leave no trace messaging. So go ahead and click all that apply, all the above, or perhaps there's none of these that you have.
We have about 50% that have responded, so we'll wait just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll.
Great. So, you know, we know that websites and social media tend to be a primary vehicle for information delivery. Certainly, it's in today's day and age, and specifically during COVID, a lot of opportunities we've had in the past in terms of educating people in person, on site, at visitor centers, you know, boots on the ground, interacting with the visiting public. Those options and opportunities haven't been as readily available in the past 18 months or so. We've seen a real uptick in use of websites, social media, that sort of thing, in terms of people seeking out information. What's interesting too is the different types of social media platforms where we're seeing a lot of traction from different types of user groups, different age groups. And so there's some important considerations in here in terms of making sure the messages you want to get out actually target the people that you're trying to educate. So it's good to know that there's you know, sort of a variety of things that are being utilized, and you know, we can certainly help provide other ideas for message dissemination, information, and that sort of thing that we're seeing through some of our newer research that's really reaching both people who are well-seasoned travelers and tourists and outdoor recreationists, but also people who are new to this sort of thing. So next slide, please. So one of the things that we're you know, obviously our focus is dealing with these impacts related to outdoor recreation, related to tourism, and so forth. And there are a variety of different types of impacts. So we can have impacts to wildlife, I mentioned. Certainly we can have impacts to soils, which lead to erosion and sedimentation. And this is usually through just, you know, trampling effects, whether it's feet or hooves or bike tires or vehicle tires. And there's ways to minimize those impacts, but sometimes these can be very significant, particularly the wildlife impacts can be a really significant impact. In many cases, a lot of these impacts are avoidable though. Next slide. We also see impacts like this. This is a slide from Southeast Alaska. This one is just so telling in terms of some folks went camping and they're out for you know, a couple of days, but lo and behold, they went to make a campfire, and now they've got this sort of crater here. This place is, you know, full of trash and litter and cookware, cooking gear, and all these various things. And this could be a really significant issue in a place like Alaska where you have grizzly bears. And this is totally avoidable, but we see these types of impacts. And again, people just don't simply understand the nature of their impacts, nor do they understand the consequences. And so you have impacts to vegetation, certainly things like heritage and cultural resources, but then we also have significant, in some cases, impacts from campfires. We know that in the US, about 90% of fires are started by people. Now that's all ignition sources. So campfires, arson, you know, mufflers in tall grass, a variety of different ways of doing it. But the point is people burn things in a lot of different ways. Much of this is avoidable in terms of the impacts. Campfires and the associated impacts can be one of the bigger issues we see on the landscape because it is so multi-layered in terms of what it can ultimately affect. Next slide, please. So we also see things like water resource impacts. And this is a significant one in terms of there's only so much fresh water that we have. And there are easy ways that we can minimize our impact, whether that's through trash and litter or wastewater, or in extreme cases, human waste. There are ways for us to deal with these things to minimize the impact on our shared water sources. And so this is a significant impact that we see on the landscape, as well as I mentioned, more of the social side, more of the impacts to other people, knowing that, again, more and more of us every year are trying to enjoy the same finite resource. And so we can either create an inclusive situation where we all can enjoy the outdoors and various places in a way that we allow others to enjoy their experience as well. But we can also have significant impacts on other people when we're spending time outside. We want to be mindful of that because there are ways to address those things. So next slide, please. So I'm curious to know what outdoor impacts has your respective communities or communities seen related to recreational travelers? And the second question is, what cultural heritage impacts has your community experienced related to recreational travelers? So we're just trying to get a real better understanding of the types of things that you all are seeing, in the locations where you are related to either impacts or impacts to cultural heritage. So feel free to populate any of these things in the chat, or Sherry, if you'd like to jump in, feel free to.
Sure. If anybody, as Ben said, if you have any impacts that you would like to share or that you've seen, please put those in the chat box or raise your hand. I know that I've heard many tribes talking about the impacts on tourism, especially during COVID, where people not wanting to be in cities with crowds, but going out on the lands, public lands, native land, tribal lands, and not really knowing the difference either. So what are some of those impacts that you've seen in your communities? And
Sherry,
Ben,
I'll add that some of the things that we see almost universally across the country, we see significant human waste impacts. Human waste is one of the perhaps most significant impacts on the land because it's a disease impact, it's a water quality impact, it's a social impact, it's an aesthetic impact. And so that's a biggie. We also see human wildlife conflict is another big impact that we see, is where people either get too close. There's been a rash of people taking selfies with wildlife over the past couple of years, and in some cases very dangerous, potentially dangerous wildlife like grizzly bears or bison. We also see just general overuse, places that are literally being loved to death. We're also seeing more and more impacts to cultural resources, whether that's, for example, there was a very sort of well-known case in the past year or so where some climbers put up a climbing route and bolted essentially safety anchors right next to petroglyphs. And, that's an egregious impact, but we're seeing more of that, which is very concerning. But we're also seeing things like trail impacts. People, particularly with respect to COVID, people wanting to pass each other, maintaining that 6 foot or further distance. We saw a lot of off-trail travel and a lot of widening of trails and that sort of thing. So that's just a snapshot of some of the things that we're seeing nationally, but very curious to see if you all are seeing similar or different things. And I'd also like to add that one of my colleagues at the center recently had a conversation with Kate Anderson of the Agua Caliente band of the Kauai Indians, and Kate had some specific impacts. I wonder, Kate, if you'd be willing to share those.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. And of course, Sherry put up this beautiful picture of our lands out here in Palm Springs, California. The Agua Caliente Band of Kauai Indians does open up quite a bit of acreage of our tribal ancestral lands for visitors. So we actually operate the Indian Canyons and the Tahquitz Canyon Visitor Center, which you see here. These are beautiful areas that are open to the general public for hiking and walking. We have over 60 miles of hiking and walking trails. We have a 60-foot waterfall right at the foot of the mountains in the middle of Palm Springs. And so there are many impacts that we see. We are open as a day facility at our sites. We do not allow overnight camping. We do not allow campfires. We do not allow open flame. Many reasons you've already heard from Ben today about why those things are important. So we actually put quite a few rules in place for our visitors, but even with the rules that we have in place, we need to do education. And so there are things that, of course, we're always working on with the community and with our visitors to better understand our lands, the value of our lands, and what we're expecting visitors to do when they enjoy our lands. So beyond just the trash and the litter and graffiti, or even in some cases, removal of items, even beyond all that, there's even more education that we pursue here in the Palm Springs area. And they can be things as simple as, on our lands, we do not want people leaving behind rock cairns, for example. So that's when you stack rocks on top of each other. They're very desirable and very acceptable in some lands, but here in Agua Caliente, they are not acceptable at all. And so we have even gotten to the point where we have to put up signage to ask people to not build those and not leave them behind. So there's those kinds of cultural impacts. Also, there are items that may be discovered in our, with our cultural resources on our lands, and with our lands being so vast, there still are cultural resources that are out on our lands. It's not uncommon in the last, 30, 40 years for things like oyas to be found, baskets to be found, yucca fiber sandals being found in caves. Those things are still out there. And in many cases, we want to leave those cultural resources where they are. Some may be buried, some may not be buried. We also have rock art that's out in our lands. And so all those things are our responsibility to protect. And so the Leave No Trace really makes a lot of sense for us, and especially the educational component for it. Some of the things that we use to put into play there, we have people who are filming on our lands. So they come out to the reservation and they film productions. We work with movie makers, we work with fashion designers, we work with people from all film industry. And some of the things that we do with them is when they bring their film out to our lands, we will meet with the team of people on the ground, and we will educate them about the ancestral land that they're about to begin working on. And we ask them to respect our lands, and we remind them that the tribal council has given them permission, special permission, to do these projects on our beautiful lands. So that's all part of the educational opportunities. A lot more that I could talk about today, but I certainly want to pass it back to Ben, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any as well.
Thanks, Kate. That's very helpful. We're seeing a couple things popping up in the chat. Let's go to the next slide. We've actually got a poll for you regarding, which, what are the impacts that you're actually seeing? And if you all would take a minute and click the ones that you're seeing, and if it's an other, if you're willing to drop that in the chat, that would be great.
Okay, we have about 60 that have responded, 60%. So we'll wait just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And there are your results.
So clearly, lots of you are seeing lots of different types of impacts. It looks like there's some clear threads in here of consistent things that you're seeing. And I would say that one of the projects that Leave No Trace and AIANTA are working on is building some visitor education pieces that can be used by all Native communities to give visitors tips and information on how to respectfully visit Native lands. and essentially tailoring leave no trace to the specific lands so that they feel relevant, they're right, the wording is right, the information, the guidance is right. So this is something that our organization and AIANTA are working on, and we'll be able to provide some in some ways some turnkey messages that can be deployed to help influence, again, people's decisions to take care of these places. And so it's something to stay tuned to. And certainly, I think there's opportunities to seek out more, insight and guidance from everyone on this call in terms of what else you're seeing out there that could also be tailored. We could create tailored leave no trace information to address those specific issues. And looks like Lisa might have a question right now.
Yes.
So you answered it. I was just about to ask if you help with more tailored approaches to get our messaging out, because I'm in Maine, and it's outdoorsmen. They should know about the leave no trace concept, but because of the terrible relationship that we've had with the state due to our land claim settlement, and just a very not so good government to government relationship, we have some fee land that we're looking hopefully to put into trust. That's near Sugarloaf and Sunday River. It's near the big ski resorts and hiking areas. And we normally allow the town of Carabasset Valley to have their trails and cross-country skiing on our lands. But there's been so many problems over the last years with them coming on and being very disrespectful to any tribal members on the land, and then leaving garbage and such. So I would love to work with you to kind of come up with a tailored literature to give them, which also goes along with our efforts to amend our Settlement Act to kind of come from underneath the state's jurisdiction, because we're one of the only states in the country that federal Indian law is not law because of our Settlement Act. So we've actually revoked and locked the gates. So we all through pretty much COVID, we haven't let them on there just because it's been so disrespectful. And they do keep coming back to us at council and asking permission. And we just really, this has just been the best webinar for me to jump on, because I think we need something tailored to sportsmen, people, but also showing how to respect a sovereign nation's land. Even though it's not in trust right now, we own it as a landowner, just like you should respect any landowner that allows you to use their land. So I would love to connect with you on that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely do that type of tailored messaging. And that's one of the nice things about leave no trace. It's not a one size fits all. I mean, in some cases it can be, but when we can locally tailor the information to better resonate with the local community, and then perhaps even tailor it beyond that to people who may be visiting a community, that's where we really see generally the greatest success, because the message resonates with the people who are intending to receive that message. So be happy to chat with you about that for sure. So let's.
Okay. Ben, I do see that Mo, before she had to leave to another meeting, asked if you envision leave no trace adding a specific principle about being respectful on Indigenous land.
That is certainly something that has been discussed. One of the things that we've been mindful of is the 7 principles as they exist have been in existence now as the set 7 for 21 years. And so there's a lot of benefits to having that consistent platform. What we more successfully do is tailor the information under each principle. So we are open to exploring new additions and new adaptations of the principles, and perhaps even adding a new principle out of whole cloth. But we take a very methodical approach to that, given how long these have been in place. And we really analyze whether or not we can adequately cover things like being respectful on Indigenous lands under the existing framework, or if it actually needs its own standalone principle. And so that's certainly a discussion that we've been having and will likely continue to have with IANTA and other partners to really make sure that they do resonate. And that's the whole point. We want this to work. So that's a great point you bring up and something that we continue to explore.
And Lisa, can I get the name of your tribe for our notes?
Yes, Penobscot Nation, Penobscot.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then I think this is our president, Mr. Vio. He says, people visiting national parks and trekking into unauthorized areas and finding petroglyph and defacing them, and visitors to native lands taking artifacts out with them. So that's what's happening.
And those are really challenging impacts, because once those resources are either defaced or damaged or stolen, there's a permanence factor that we don't see with the apple core or the human waste issue. And that's why this is such a specific focus, and I think it should be for our efforts here, because these really are treasures that if they're gone, they're gone. And so that's why it's just so important to do everything we can to message to people about enjoying these resources in a responsible, respectful way. So I think we're ready for the next slide.
Okay. Well, we've had a lot of great discussion today, and I'm wondering how Leave No Trace defines native lands.
That is a great question, Sherry. It has been a sort of an ongoing evolution for us, because as we learn more and as we have, started this great partnership with IANTA, we're starting to realize that the ways that we might have identified those lands in the past is maybe not the best contemporary, current definition. And so one of the things that we're working with IANTA on is to create some preliminary language on how we really can meaningfully encompass all native lands and provide that definition. And so, we want to make sure that we're hearing from all of you in terms of how you all define native lands, so that we can collectively come to a good definition that both Leave No Trace and IANTA can utilize. And, there's some basic questions like, is native lands even the right term? Does that appropriately encompass indigenous lands in Alaska and Hawaii, for example? And so this is another project that we're working on with IANTA, is really raising awareness among visitors, recreationists and other travelers about indigenous lands in the United States in order to create a more aware and informed and considerate visitor. And step one is really making sure that we are using the common language that resonates regarding native lands.
And Emerson, did you raise your hand?
Hi, Sherry, I sure did.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just, on that part of native lands, I know not all native nations across the country have reservations. I know here in the state of New Mexico, most of our pueblos refer to their lands as reservations, Native American Indian reservations. So yeah, I see your challenge there as to how to define native lands, but I think also kind of go back a couple comments made earlier on the destruction of petroglyphs and how visitors treat Indian country when they come visit. They think it's a free-for-all. But I think as far as my pueblo is concerned, Acoma, we really write it out and present to the visitors exactly what behavior we're expecting from those people that come visit us. And Kate Anderson was right on saying, hey, you're allowed, you're basically given permission to visit. And I think we're, as far as Acoma is concerned, we emphasize that, because we do in our Mesa area where our village is we regard those lands, not only the Mesa, but the surrounding area as sacred lands. And I think that's another part of education that Kate mentioned, was we got to educate these people as to who we are and what we believe in. It's a lot of people come visit from wherever they may be from and don't really understand or really are ignorant on the history of Native Americans. So I think it behooves every nation to really put out, okay, what do we really believe in? Why do we say our lands are sacred and that type of thing? I mean, not really divulging everything, but enough for the visitor to understand why certain rules are set in place. And that, I think, also ties into it, how do we define the native lands? Well, I think for us, I think most of us define it as our reservation. That's our land. But as a whole, we also consider the whole country as native lands too, and we respect that no matter where we're at. So I think that also has to be pointed out in some of those documents and education that goes out to visitors. That's it.
Thank you, Emerson. Okay. Other comments? What do native lands mean to you? You know, we talk a lot as well, you know, with the National Park Service, the national parks were once native lands. And so I think that, you know, native lands aren't just maybe some lands that aren't reservations are also considered native lands, you know, that were once part of the tribe, that were the ancestral lands of those people. What do you guys think about that? And you can either raise your hand. I see Megan has raised her hand. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I just, the previous speaker talked about how important it is to share that out with folks, so that people have in general, just a better understanding. And I hope that America 250 can help with that we can help share these stories and provide the general public, right, whatever that means to folks, some context, right, for having these conversations and what that means and why these places are important and how to respect and move through them in ways that leave no trace, then either right physically or spiritually or emotionally for folks. So yeah, I just want to, you know, offer what we can from America 250 to help share that message out as well as part of what it is to live in this country.
Great. Thanks, Megan. We appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. That's excellent. And we will be in touch. I think we're ready for our next slide, Sherry.
Okay. So if you're interested in participating in the solutions portion of this conversation, please join Leave No Trace during the American Indian Tourism Conference. They will be there presenting during session 6 on Thursday, October 28th.
And then our last slide. We would encourage you all, to the extent you're interested or willing, we're going to be forming an advisory group starting in November after the conference to continue exploring these conversations about what are the impacts that you're seeing, you know, looking at the potential solutions, you know, developing targeted messages, leveraging the best available science that we have on visitors and travelers and their attitudes, and how we can leverage those specific attitudes to really influence their decisions to not only enjoy responsibly, but also to enjoy respectfully and understand how rich the cultural history is that they can enjoy, but also why they need to do so in a respectful way that leaves things certainly as good or better than they found them. So if you're interested in the advisory group, certainly check in with the AIANTA staff. The more voices we have, the better. I think we can create a much more robust effort if we can really take into account the expertise of those of you on this call and others that you may know who may be interested in this process, because we know that Leave No Trace can work, and we know that it does influence the decisions people make, but we also know that we need more information to make sure that our efforts are as effective as they can be. And the way we do that is through collaboration. So again, I'd just like to say thanks to all of you for participating today. Thanks for the information you shared. And also thanks to the AIANTA staff for making this happen. It's a great opportunity for us. And we're just happy to participate today and really are grateful for the partnership and look forward to more good work to come.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. We appreciate you being here for Andrew and the Leave No Trace group. Lisa has already said she's interested in the advisory group. So we have one taker so far. One last thing I wanted to mention is our upcoming American Indian Tourism Conference. It's taking place October 25th through the 28th at the Weekapaw Casino Resort in Fort McDowell with the Fort McDowell Yavapai Nation. And you can see here all of the wonderful things that we're doing, starting out with a charity golf tournament on October 24th. That is Sunday. Monday are our mobile workshops. Great opportunity to find out about the local culture there. October 28th, which is the last evening of our conference, we're having the Excellence in Tourism Industry Awards Gala and Silent Auction. So we award in 4 different categories. We do have a COVID-19 mitigation plan in place, and we are requiring everyone to wear masks, to be vaccinated, and if not, to have a COVID test 72 hours prior to the conference start. Let's see, I mentioned the gala on the last evening. It is a denim and turquoise themed gala this year. It's going to be outdoors, one of their beautiful venues that they have on the nation there. And it won't be just wonderful menu of traditional foods, but they also have some other surprises for our attendees. So it's going to be a great event and very unique. And so we're really excited about that, and we hope to see you all there. Again, we want to thank you for your time today, your participation. All of that information, all of the comments really help us to move forward our initiatives in working with America 250 and Leave No Trace. So thank you once again, and please have a great afternoon and a great rest of your week. Thank you.